She sent me a text. Yeah.
Hello. Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay, thank you, Nuria. She's
Wonderful.
like my security blanket, so.
Well, yes. Well, thank you so much for joining. And I should say thank you very much for joining and for all the Red Cross staff and volunteers who are joining in the midst of Tropical Storm Beta, who is on our doorstep right now in our region. And we make sure that all of our thoughts, our prayers are with anybody who may be in the affected area and who may be affected with time to come. I'm sure, Consul, you would agree that we're still in the height of hurricane season and we're not out of the woods yet.
Yeah, and that's why for us it's so important to have this relationship with the Red Cross, because not only to cross information, but also to know how to react in case of disaster, natural disasters. So I think that this has been a wonderful relation that we had with Red Cross.
Thank you. Well, let me formally introduce the Honorable Alicia Kerber-Palma. She is the Consul General of Mexico based in Houston, Texas since March of 2019, as a member of the Mexican Foreign Service since 1991. So she's 16, everybody. She has previously served the consul in Philadelphia, Kansas, and San Pedro Sula in Honduras. She has a law degree from Iberoamericana University in Mexico and a doctorate in law from the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico. Welcome, Consul Gerber, as our guest here today with our kicking off our series of a conversation with consuls celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month here with the Red Cross. Thank you so much for joining.
No, a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So the way it's going to work is we have some questions that have come from our team members and just an informal conversation. And Marco, I believe, will be monitoring the chat in case anybody has any questions. So just this is for everybody on the call. Please mute your microphones and go ahead and block your video unless you're Ms. Nuria and the council and Marco or I. You can post any questions you may have in the chat section, and if time allows, we'll put time at the end of the call. There will be an interpreter. Marco is willing to interpret, so anybody on either side who would like to say something for the interview, and the conference will be recorded and posted for future reference to share with our team members who are maybe busy right now with the response. So now that the housekeeping is done, I'm going to start my first question, Council, if that's okay.
Yes, of course, please.
First of all, to you, what is the meaning of Hispanic Heritage Month?
Well, the Hispanic Heritage Month has been very important here in the United States because it's the month where we recognize not only the independence of Mexico, but it also took place many independence of many countries in Latin America, as Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Chile. All those countries also have their independence in the same month. You can go back to the history, and there was a very huge movement of intellectual people trying to get their independence from Spain. Well, many of those intellectuals were in Mexico, and they were the head of all these movements in Latin America, we can say that. So that's why it's so important that we can have that recognition here in the United States, because it's also sent an important message to the community, the Latin American community in the United States, that there's some acknowledge of what they have been doing and how they had contributed to the development of the United States.
Absolutely. And I think it's very important. I think you would agree in a unique place like Texas and in where we are in Texas, the rich history where we live once resided and was part of Mexico. And a lot of our culture, and specifically in the South, is tied. We have families who have on this region who are on both sides of the border. The border means nothing. It doesn't divide a family. It's just a way, a geographic boundary, a political boundary between two loving communities.
And if you take in account, as you were saying, that Texas was part of Mexico, and that is something that you cannot just put like a border between the two countries and forget the history and forget the ties, cultural ties, and the relation among communities. That's so important. The dynamic that exists in the border is something that you cannot see in any other part of the world. Just in the border, I always highlight, you can see, for example, that we trade $1 million per day. That's huge. That's something, forget about if we love each other or we don't love each other, just the economic information present you a reality that you cannot just erase with any type of speech.
That is so accurate. My grandfather growing up always used to say to people who said he was a Mexicano and then American, he said, my family didn't cross the border crossed me.
That's it.
Is how he
Yeah.
explained it for us growing up.
Yeah.
So I think you explained why the time period is so important because of the different independence from so many Latin American countries from Spain. But how would you describe, we talked a little bit about this, how would you describe the influence of Mexico's culture in Texas in the current century we're in?
Well, you can see also that there's a huge influence of Mexico or Mexican culture here in Texas. Just something very simple. Wherever you go, you will find a Mexican restaurant. That's food. Food is something that has been considered internationally of something that belongs to the complete humanity, international heritage. So that's not something that any type of kitchen or cuisine can be proud of receiving that type of recognition. Is because the Mexican cuisine has been recognized by very well-known people as something that has crossed not only the border of the United States, but the world. So any place you go around the world, you will find Mexican food. And here in Texas, you can find it just in any corner. Wherever you want, you will find Mexican food. Everybody knows what tacos are. So those have been created in Mexico, is part of our culture, is part of the different type of food that has developed from the north part of Mexico to the south part of Mexico. You can also see that, for example, the charros, the charreria, Mexican charreria, is very similar to what the cowboys do here in Texas. There's such a connection between those type of expressions that represents the connection between two countries and two communities that goes beyond any type of as you said, any type of border or any type of consideration. You can also see the language that we speak here in Houston, or that is spoken here in Houston, is some type of new language. No, you can see this, the Spanglish.
Yep.
It's very unique. You can see also that the murals, very colorful, and that colorfulness comes from the Mexican culture. But there are a huge number of Mexican artists or artists from Mexican origin that are here in Houston, and that's something that we need to really be proud of. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of many type of expressions that have crossed the border, and they are linked to our history, and they are linked also to the members of the community. As you were saying, your father was from Mexico, and your father was in the other side of the border, but people that suddenly saw that the border crossed them, they didn't forget their traditions or their history or their type of food. They brought those traditions and make Houston a richness place to be.
Which goes into my next questions. I truly see it every day in Texas specifically, but I see it in the people. You talked about Spanglish, and again, another saying of my father's, Tex-Mex is more than a food; it's a people. We're coming this demographic, this culture is becoming almost a unique culture in its own. This blending of two cultures. And so, what do you think are some highlights? You spoke a little bit, but maybe what are some highlights and benefits of the blending of cultures that's happening right here in the Houston area for you?
I think that the benefits are obvious, no? That the mix of cultures has created a new type of expression. And many of these, and Nuria has make a lot of events, cultural events that had reflect that type of mixture between the two cultures. Is, for example, that the writers, you can see a lot of writers, poetry made by Chicanos, that those words or that type of name, Chicanos, is to represent the mixture of two cultures. Or the previous one that were the Pachucos, that used to dress in a different way, use a different type of language, that maybe they were rejected previously, but now they are, this is the reality. We have a different type of culture. Just in the border of Texas and in the border of Mexico, you have 10 million people. Well, in the border complete of Mexico and United States, you have 10 million people that have a very unique culture. And that's a vivid community that exchange products, that exchange traditions, that exchange knowledge, whatever you want. I think that we need to take advantage of that type of relation instead of thinking that migration or the topic of migration is the only topic that we are concerned of. No, we are talking about more different type of topics, like how to increase the exchange of students, how to increase the number of professors, university professors coming to the universities of the United States, and also professors from Texas going to the universities of Mexico, because we have seen that once you make those type of exchanges, the knowledge of a country grows, because when they return, they can share their knowledge and multiply it. So that's the better way to know your neighbors. I always say that when you move to a house or to a new home, and maybe you won't like your neighbor, well, it's your option to move to another house, or sometime you will think, I would like to kill my neighbor. No, that won't happen with the United States and Mexico, because Mexico is not moving from where we are, and nobody's going to kill us. So we need to really take advantage of those values that we are sharing in these moments, such as democracy, such as the respect of human rights, and such as the exchange of students, professors, scientifics, doctors, whatever. We need to move forward and to take these COVID times as an advantage, because now with these new platforms that we are using, we can really reach more people and have new projects maybe.
That's such an impactful statement. And I think you said it, that we have a lot more in common, especially in that border region. It's almost like a whole other place on in itself, on both sides immediately of the border, where commerce, trade, families, learning, all of that happens regardless of what side you're on. I know, again, my family history actually immigrated from Honduras to Mexico and then to Brownsville on the border. And half of them lived across the border, and half lived in Brownsville at the time of World War II. But both sets of families served, and I think that's a very historical kind of reminder for folks. We've talked about this. I've said this to our staff and to our volunteers, that the Houston area, the Gulf Coast region, so to speak, already looks and feels like the rest of the U.S. country is going to look in 20 to 30 years. All of our demographics are shifting. How big, in your mind, how big is the Mexican community in the area? How large?
Well, we are talking about a huge number of communities. The community here in Houston is the second one largest in the United States. The Mexican community is the second largest of the United States after California. So you can see that it's a huge, huge community. Just to take in account, I have these numbers here. Texas population is around 28 million, 29 million people, around those numbers, of which around 8 million are Mexican, but represent 27% of the total population. That means a lot. That means that what we are talking now, it's a reality, that we are just really linked with Houston is really linked with the Mexican community. And that's something that in these moments we need to take in also in or have it in mind, because just you hear that many people talk about migration about, like if it's a huge problem around the world, and we think that migration, we need to see migration like an advantage, because those people that migrate, they bring with them a lot of values, a lot of new knowledge, a lot of traditions that once they establish in a place, they make it a richer place to live.
Oh, I can't agree more. What would you say? I'm going to answer a question that came up that has to do with the demographics, if that's okay. One of the questions that came up was for the Red Cross, what is our Latin demographics for the Red Cross chapter? And I'm going to give the statistics for the entire region, which is larger than just Houston. But we are what we call a majority minority region, meaning more folks are Black and brown than they are Anglo or white. And so for us, about 55% of our population is minority. Of that 55%, close to 40% of that is Latino. Now that's not only Mexicano, but most of that is Latino. In Houston, we know that number actually is a majority minority when it comes to there. What would you say? So the next question, I'm going to ask this to you, Consul Gerber, if that's okay. What would be your recommendations for the Red Cross to reach out to either Mexicanos or people of Mexicano descent during times of disaster? How can we do that best?
Here at the consulate, we have seen that the advantage that we have, and we say that it's an advantage because whenever we make an event, I don't know, if we apply vaccines or if we give legal information or if we give information related with how to react in case of natural disasters, what has been an advantage for us is that we always provide that information in Spanish, and that people that call us know that there will be somebody in the other side of the line that is going to speak Spanish, and that is going to understand what they are saying. We have a protection department where we give a lot of information to our nationals regarding any type of legal situation that they can be passing through. We can give them that information in Spanish, and we know how to transmit that information. That's why for us, it's very important to have these talks, not only with the Red Cross, but also I'm making like a tour with all the law enforcement authorities of our region. Now that is possible to do it through the Zoom meetings and all these platforms, the Teamworks and all that. I'm making this tour to talk with the law enforcement authorities so that to let them know that the more that we can work together, the better for the community, because you can see, and you have seen it also, and Marco has seen it also, that wherever we put the name of the Mexican consulate, Latinos go there because they know that there's a safe place where they can receive that information, and we are not concerned about their immigration status. In these days, for example, for many of our nationals, to see a uniform and a badge is like everybody's size. So we try to let them know not everybody's size, but if you are concerned about that, come to the consulate because we can help you to make any type of report. We don't want our community to be quiet and not make a report, because that will affect not only the Latino community, but the community in general. And we want to work also in behalf of the community in general.
And I would say, to your earlier point, a quiet community that's hurting in silence will hurt the economy, which hurts everybody. If you're not able to recover and I would remind our team, part of what the Red Cross mission is to alleviate that human suffering so that things can get back to as normal as possible. And that means everybody doing what they were doing before the hurricane happened, going back to work, getting back to teaching, getting back to loving one another and our families. And so I do want to highlight a great partnership we just had in response to Hurricane Laura, where both, I believe that you had a mobile consulate activities out in the Beaumont area, and we partnered with the Red Cross to ensure that families receive vital supplies. So I want to thank you for that partnership. but we
No.
saw that was weeks after landfall and the need was still great, correct?
Yeah. No, and you have been wonderful partners because whenever we need to know where the Mexicans are struggling with a X situation or some kind of situation, you have always helped us in identifying those places. And yes, when the Hurricane Laura passed, we saw that maybe it didn't pass as we expected. It was going to pass through this to Houston and Galveston and all that part. But at the end, it affected many of our members of our community that they were not hardly prepared to suffer those situations. And we were able to reach them, to provide them with food, to provide them with documents, to provide them with whatever they need in those moments. And we cross information with you as well as with the law enforcement authorities. So that's something that has been working wonderfully. And as you were saying, sometimes the economy is the best way to understand the richness of the Latino community in the United States. And just recently we have somebody asking us how to reach the Mexican community from the commercial view. Mm-hmm. So we told them, please don't do this type of advertisements that said, I don't know, drink, I don't know, la tacita, and put a Mexican with a sombrero or a Chihuahua dog. That's not what is going to send the message that you are linked with the Latino community. You need to really know the values of the Mexican or the Hispanic community so that you can make a proper advertisement. And that goes beyond just the stereotypes of figures and images, no?
Yes, I think it goes to the cultural competency, not just a language competency, but a cultural competency to understand. We wouldn't just want to be sold cars with hot dogs and Uncle Sam, right? That doesn't sell cars and stuff. The same thing would go. So I appreciate that. If time allows, I'd like to get to some of the questions in our chat, if that's okay, Consul Gerber, with you. Please. Some great questions have come in. What message? This is from Luis. What message would you give students here who are families that came from Mexico in today's, pandemic era? What message would you give to students who are currently dealing with everything they're dealing with, who have come from Mexico?
Obey your parents.
That's probably a good message, no matter what's happening.
No, but I think that the young generation had shown us that they are very well organized, that they know what they want to in the future for them. You can see the DACA students that have been fighting for their rights and that have been very open to what they want to for the future. So I think that's the best way that the world has future having this type of new generation. So I think that the advice must come from the students or from the new generations to the adults that sometimes don't understand or that don't want to understand what type of world we are going to leave to the next generations.
That's so true. Our youth push us to make the changes that are necessary for the tomorrow that is the promise, right? That's what they do. They push us.
But whenever any type of, if there is a Mexican student or a student that their parents are from Mexico and they are struggling with any kind of situation, I will recommend them to call to the consulate or to send us an email. We are going to answer them and try to solve their situation.
Perfect. Thank you. This question comes from Ana Trejo. Does the consulate have any activities to help kids in detention centers, specifically those who have been separated perhaps by their parents or unaccompanied upon the crossing?
Yeah, we make a very precise follow-up of those cases of kids, Mexican kids that were detained. Fortunately for Mexico, there were not many kids that were detained and put in cages and all that. So if Ms. Trejo knows about some case of a Mexican citizen or a Mexican kid that is in a specific situation, let us know and we will make a follow-up of the case.
Absolutely. And I think this is a great question from Alejandro. What are some ideas for relating our cultural heritage with first and second generation Mexicanos so we can keep the traditions as much as authentic? This goes to some of what you were saying, as much as possible, without the influence or stereotypical influence of what Hollywood or the media may say Mexican life or culture is.
Yeah, I think the more important thing is that make their kids be proud of where they come from. If you don't know your roots, you can hardly understand where you want to go. And that's what kids, or new generations need also to know. Where are my roots? Where my parents come from? So to pass this type of traditions to the new generations is also very important, because in that kind they will find their own identity that is also enriched by two cultures, the North American culture and by one of the most ancient culture and more richness culture, that is the Mexican culture. And we want also to jump from the stereotype of, you said it, from the mariachi or tacos or tequila. That's why the Mexican consulate has made different cultural activities where we have presented the new artists, the new generations of artists, of music, of sculpture, of painters, of muralists, of whatever you think. We have made it here at the consulate. So we will continue working on that, and let your kids know that we have a webpage, we have a tweet, we have a Facebook where they can explore what we have, and we can also give them some type of advice.
And maybe you can share Jose Castillo, who's one of our fantastic lead disaster case managers here in the Houston area, has a great question of what's the best number or the point of contact when they have, and I'm going to change his question, a Mexicano a client that, or Mexicana, that may need assistance. Who should she put him in touch with at the Mexican consulate?
Is the Department of Protection. We have an emergency phone that works 24/7. There's a telephone that is el Centro de Información Atención a Mexicanos, the CIAM, but it's very easy. There's an app that you can download on your phone that is Mi Consul Mex. That app, you have any type of emergency, but when I talk about emergencies, really emergency, not asking for the how can I obtain a passport? No, if you have any emergency, there's a panic button. You press that panic button and it immediately will send you to the Department of Protection of the closest consulate
Wow.
for you. So that's something that we have improved in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And we work very close with the consular network that we have here in the United States. We have 50 consulates. We are the biggest network of consulates working in this country, and we are all connected in order to better serve to our community.
Oh, thank you so much for that information. Here's a great question here, and then this will be our last one. Francisco, I see you have your hand up. If you type your question into the chat, Francisco, I'll make sure I get that out. But here's a great question. In highly segregated Anglo-Hispanic communities, are Latino churches the only way to reach out to the Latino community, or how else would you recommend going and engaging with them at a ground level?
I think that no, not only churches. We, for example, the consulate work very closely with different type of churches, different denomination, but we also work with the school districts. We work very close with the school districts. We work very close with the, as I told you, with the law enforcement authorities. But whenever they find any type of situation, please send us an email or call the Mexican consulate, because we have also helped people from Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua. If we don't have the resources, because many of the economic resources are reserved for Mexicans, we will put them in touch with their consulates here. We know that because we are the biggest consulate here, they reach us because maybe they don't know they have their consulate here. We can put them in touch with them, and in that way they can have all the information. Something that I would like to also to give you is the email of the Mexican consulate, that is Atención Público, HOU, @SRE
Thank
So
you so
you
much.
can send us any type of suggestion, or yeah, they have any case, they can write us and we immediately answer those type of emails.
Yeah, I appreciate it so much. We are, so a comment here from, oh, and thank you. We just typed that email address into the chat so everybody can see it.
Okay.
We have some comments from Claudia, who says, proud to be Mexican and blessed to be a resident of the United States, US Mex, and lucky to belong to the Red Cross in both countries. And this brings me to one of my questions. Red Cross is a global brand that is present. In your experience, being in many different, obviously in Honduras, Mexico, and now the US, what do you think, what have you seen the impact of the Red Cross across all three countries? What do you think that importance lies?
Well, the Red Cross is a very well-known organization, and we know that working with the Red Cross is a better way to reach our communities, no matter where you are. In case of emergencies or disasters, Red Cross is always there, and in a very transparent and accountable way. That's something that we really want to privilege, to be accountable and to work with transparency.
I love that transparency, honesty, open and honest dialogue is the way things get moved forward.
Yes, of course.
Okay, and now this is the last question, and it's the most important question for everybody who's listening. We've mentioned food like 3 or 4 times, I think, in our discussion, and it's almost 6 o'clock, so that must be most of us are hungry. And for those on the call, this question will be in Spanish and answered in Spanish, and then Marco can translate. But we really wanted to give a little bit of a flavor, if you will, to this question. Okay. ¿Cuáles serán los platillos típicos que un mexicano incluirá en el menú de un día normal para desayuno, comida y cena?
Oh my God! Wow, you have plenty of food, Mexican food that we can prepare at home. Or in Mexico, you can go to these little markets, or you can prepare it at home, or you can go to a fancy restaurant. But for example, if you want to be at home in the morning and you want to prepare something, maybe huevos rancheros in the north part of Mexico, machaca con huevo, bocoles, tamaulipecos, that's just for breakfast. Like around 3 o'clock or in the afternoon, you can eat like, I don't know, chilaquiles with frijoles, frijolitos refritos, and guacamole. Or you can eat like chicken with vegetables, very well prepared with this adobo or cochinita pibil that is from the south part of Mexico. That is delicious. I'm just, oh my God, I'm just trying to eat. And at night you can eat like a quesadilla or tacos al pastor that are very well known. Or if you don't want to eat so heavy, maybe just chocolate with churros. That's a very, very healthy food that you can eat in a day.
Consul Gerber, thank you for joining. I think the last question got everybody typing and hungry, but I think it's important. What I think is important is, and these will just some closing comments maybe. In this time, and I know you've been here since March, which for our country has been a very delicate conversation that's been happening around equality and justice around our communities of color, both brown and black. I hope that conversations like this, where we're able to just talk about serious issues like detention centers and very fun issues like what we would like to eat on a given day, or what would progress and make our cultures more amenable, but more importantly, serve the community in the best way. So what your closing comments to our group in kind of that frame of mind, where in this time of where I think I can't remember a time where diversity and inclusion has been more part of the dialogue than it is today.
Yes, I know that something that has distinguished Texas, or at least Houston, is the diversity of the community. you can see diversity wherever you go. But at the same time, we want to focus here at the consulate in trying to highlight programs with a gender view.
Sí.
Something that I'm committed on is to empower women in their own communities, and that's why many of the programs that we have continue working on here at the consulate have this perspective of gender view. And we are working with groups of women here at the consulate so that they can really feel that there's hope here. If they don't find the door, they can knock the door of the consulate and we can help them. No matter if they are suffering from domestic violence or if they want to, I don't know, receive a training so that they can find a better way to live here in Houston, or if they want to find a shelter place, or they want to continue their studies, or they are in economic situation, struggling with the economic situation, we can help them here at the consulate. And we will continue working so that diversity can be really appreciated in the numbers that we were talking before, in the numbers of the Latino community that is here in Houston, and that people can really understand that the relation between Mexico and the United States goes beyond many of the topics that are only highlighted in the newspapers. No, we have a very strong community, a vivid community that is moving the economy of Texas, that are essential workers in many ways, in the fields, in the, as they call themselves, yarderos, ruferos, or people that are working as doctors, as nurses. Those are essential workers that in these moments are moving their economy. So let's recognize them in these COVID times.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Consul Gerber. Muchas gracias por todo. And I just want to say to our team, celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month is celebrating American culture, because this the culture that we have is a blending of many. And certainly the Mexicano culture is just one of many. We look forward. We will continue the conversations. We have other consul generals that are going to be joining us through the week. And thank you so much, Consul Gerber, for being our first. And I think we'll be our best, but I'm a little bit biased. That's right. And thank you so much for tonight. Thank you so much for joining. Everyone be safe with Tropical Storm Beta out there. Beto, listen to me. Beta. And let's make sure that we all continue to do our mission in a way that'll make both Mexicanos and Americans proud. Thank you so much, Council.
Y que viva México.
Que viva México. Gracias.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining. This will end our presentation.
Great job, Marco. Great job, Henry.
Thank you. To the very end. All right. All right. Perfect.